July 13th, 2014. Rio de Janeiro. Mario Götze had just scored the goal that made Germany world champions. Confetti fell. Tears came. A nation celebrated. And somewhere in that stadium, nobody was thinking about what comes next. Nobody ever does. Because winning a World Cup feels like the end of a story. It isn't. It's the beginning of something much harder. History has a pattern. A quiet, brutal pattern that most fans never notice, until suddenly it becomes impossible to ignore. 6 times across 22 completed World Cups, the defending champion has returned to defend their title. And gone home in the group stage. 6 times. Not in the quarterfinals, not in the semifinals. The group stage. The very first test. And since 2002, 4 of the last 5 defending champions have not survived it. Think about that for a moment. The odds of this happening by chance, 4 out of 5, are roughly the same as flipping a coin and landing heads 4 times in a row. Possible, in theory, and yet it keeps happening. France, Italy, Spain, Germany. All world champions, all eliminated before the knockout rounds even began. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern that football refuses to explain. They call it the champion's curse. And in the summer of 2026, Argentina arrived carrying it. To understand what Argentina faced, you have to understand the 4 kingdoms that fell before them. Start with France. June 2002. Senegal. France arrived in South Korea and Japan as defending world champions and European champions simultaneously. The most complete squad on the planet, many said. Zinedine Zidane, Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira. They lost their opening match to Senegal, a result so unlikely that the stadium fell momentarily silent, as if the scoreboard itself needed a second to process it. Zidane hadn't recovered from injury in time. The team that had conquered everything 2 years earlier couldn't find the net once. 3 matches, 0 goals, eliminated. Nobody had a word for what had just happened, because nobody had expected to need one. 8 years later, Italy, reigning world champions since 2006, one of the tournament favorites. They drew their first match, lost their second, drew their third. Out. The Azzurri, 4-time world champions, gone from the 2010 World Cup in South Africa before the knockout stage had even begun. But the manner of it cut deeper than the result. In the dressing room after the final group game, Italian midfielder Daniele De Rossi reportedly sat in silence for 20 minutes before anyone spoke. 4 world titles on the badge, and nothing left to say. This was not shock. Shock implies surprise. This was humiliation. The slow, airless kind that arrives when the team that was supposed to be untouchable is touched and cannot answer. Then Spain. Brazil. Spain arrived as the most decorated international side in history. World Cup winners in 2010, European champions in 2008 and 2012. 5 straight years at the summit of world football. They played football the way a tide comes in. Slowly, inevitably, until there was nowhere left to stand. Or so everyone had believed. Their first match, a 5-1 defeat to the Netherlands. Their second match, a loss to Chile. After 2 games, Spain were already going home. The greatest dynasty in the modern era. Dismantled in 6 days, not beaten. Dismantled. There is a difference. Shock fades. Humiliation stings. But disbelief lingers. Because Spain had not looked like a team in decline. They had looked like the standard. Right up until the moment they weren't. And then Germany. Russia. By now, there was a pattern. Everyone could see the pattern, and still. The reigning world champions. Shock defeat to Mexico in the opener. A late, dramatic win over Sweden. Then elimination against South Korea. Germany, the team that had humiliated Brazil 7-1 on Brazilian soil 4 years earlier, couldn't advance past the first round. This was no longer a coincidence to be explained away. This was the 4th time, in a row. This was the moment the pattern stopped being a curiosity and started being something else entirely. 4 defending champions, 4 group stage exits, 4 crowns returned before the tournament truly began, 4 falls. And here is what made it worse than any of them could admit. Argentina was next. The question isn't whether the pattern exists. The data makes that impossible to deny. The question is why. Why does winning a World Cup so often become a trap for the team that wins it? One answer sits in the nature of the tournament itself. A World Cup cycle is 4 years. 4 years of change. Players who were 23 in 2022 are 27 in 2026. Players who were 30 are now retired or diminished. The squad that won together is never the same squad 4 years on. But the expectation remains identical. The pressure doesn't decrease because key players age. It increases because now there is something to defend. The data reveals something uncomfortable. The vast majority of defending champions who fell in the group stage had made very few meaningful structural changes between cycles. The formation that won becomes sacred. The identity that delivered the trophy becomes untouchable. Nothing changes. Everything else does. Coaches are reluctant to rebuild what already worked. But football moves. While the champion protects its blueprint, other nations study it, counter it, and build specifically to defeat it. 4 years is a long time to prepare an answer. It is not a long time to protect a question. Spain's style, patient, possession-based, suffocating, dominated from 2008 to 2014. By 2014, every major nation had spent 3 years preparing their answer to it. That preparation arrived in the form of the Netherlands. 5 goals. First match. Defending champions are not random teams. To wear the crown, you had to win. That is the achievement. It is also the trap. And beyond adaptation, there is something harder to measure. Pressure. Pure, unrelenting pressure. The defending champion cannot simply compete. They are expected to dominate. Every draw feels like a defeat. Every uncomfortable performance becomes a crisis. Opponents play against them with desperation and nothing to lose. Every underdog in the group stage treats the match against the world champions as the defining moment of their tournament. The defending champion plays the same match with a target on their back and the weight of history pressing down. June 2026, the group stage of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. 48 teams, 104 matches. 3 countries, the United States, Mexico, and Canada, hosting the biggest edition of the tournament ever staged. Argentina walked in as the team everyone expected to become the 5th consecutive defending champion eliminated in the group stage. They didn't. Lionel Messi delivered a hat trick in one group match. Argentina dominated their second fixture. They advanced. But surviving the group stage was only the beginning, because the curse does not need the group stage. It only needs a moment. Picture the scene. A knockout match. The clock deep into the second half. Argentina behind. The crowd not hostile, something worse than hostile, expectant, waiting to witness a fall that felt inevitable. On the sideline, the coaches watched. On the pitch, the players ran. In the stadium, the atmosphere had the particular quality of a room where everyone already knows the ending. And somewhere, in real time, the numbers moved. Argentina's odds of winning the entire tournament reached 45-1. 45-1. Those are the odds a bookmaker gives a team that did not qualify. A team that does not exist in the conversation. A team that is not on the pitch. At that same moment, their odds of winning that single fixture, the match they were already playing, reached 20-1. A defending world champion. A squad containing Lionel Messi. 20-1 to win a match they were already in. Then something shifted. They came back. By July 9th, 2026, the day the quarterfinals were set, Argentina stood at plus 390 odds to win the tournament. Not eliminated, not comfortable. Alive. but still carrying the weight that every defending champion carries, because surviving is not the same as thriving. And the 2026 World Cup quarterfinals contained a detail that no defending champion could afford to ignore. France. While Argentina fought to stay in the tournament, France moved with a quietness that felt almost deliberate. In one of their group matches, a French forward collected the ball near the center circle, turned without urgency, and played it sideways. The crowd barely reacted. There was nothing to react to. The move was unremarkable. That was the point. France were not performing. They were operating. Calm in a way that unsettled opponents more than noise ever could. They won Group 1 with 3 victories. One of those results, 4-1 against Norway. But the number that told the real story wasn't the goals scored. It was the goals conceded. When the knockout stage began, France advanced through their first 2 matches without a single goal against them. 0. In a tournament with 48 teams, where attackers from every continent had spent 4 years preparing, France's defense had not been beaten once. That is the kind of statistic that doesn't make headlines. It makes opponents lose sleep. By July 9th, 2026, the same moment Argentina's odds sat at plus 390, France stood at plus 180. The clear favorites, the form team, the team nobody had found an answer to yet. And here is where history adds its sharpest irony. France were themselves a victim of the champion's curse. June 2002. The same France that had won the 1998 World Cup on home soil, eliminated in the group stage without scoring a goal. 24 years later, France were the team most likely to become world champions again. If they succeeded, they would be the first nation since Brazil, who won in 1958 and 1962, to win consecutive World Cups. 2 tournaments, back-to-back. Something football hadn't seen in over 60 years. France's journey to this position wasn't simply about talent. It was about the choices made after 2022, the adaptation, the structural changes that most defending champions refused to make. Whether France had genuinely broken the pattern that consumed the 4 nations before them, or whether the curse was simply saving its answer for the final rounds. That remained the question the tournament hadn't yet answered. MetLife Stadium, New York/New Jersey. July 19th, 2026. The World Cup final. Every 4 years, the same story begins. A new champion is crowned. The celebrations last weeks. The parades, the records, the photographs. And then, quietly, the next cycle starts. Players age. Rivals adapt. The world studies the blueprint, and somewhere in a training ground nobody has heard of, a team is building the answer to a question the champions don't yet know they'll be asked. The champion's curse is not magic. It is not superstition. It is the compressed consequence of time, adaptation, and the unstoppable movement of football itself. The nations that fell, France twice across 2 different eras, Italy, Spain, Germany, and others before them, did not lose because they were unlucky. They lost because winning a World Cup requires a version of a team that, by definition, cannot be frozen in time. Football is never the same tournament twice. The team that peaks in one cycle rarely peaks in the next. The tactics that dominate one era become the tactics the next era trains specifically to dismantle. And the pressure of returning as champions, of every opponent circling that match on their calendar the moment the draw is made, is a pressure no other team in the tournament carries. Argentina understood this in 2026 more viscerally than any champion before them. They lived it in real time. A match where their odds touched 45-1. A moment where the curse seemed to be writing its 5th consecutive chapter. They survived it. But survival is not legacy. Legacy is what happens in New York on July 19th. You will watch the goals, the celebrations, the lifted trophy. But the real story, the one history tends to overlook, is the invisible weight every defending champion carries from the moment they win until the moment they either break the pattern or become part of it. Some moments are remembered forever. Most of the minutes that made them possible are forgotten the same night. Beyond the bench. This is Beyond the Bench,